both for joining me here with Industrial Logic to do a little chat about the Actionable Psychological Safety Workshop. And this is just a casual conversation amongst friends and colleagues and folks who have taken this class to talk about what was the reason behind taking it, what was impactful for you. We're really looking to continuously improve the experience for folks and also let them know that this stuff is out there. So maybe we'll do a round of introductions first. So I'm Tara Scott. I am a coach and consultant and teacher and all of the things here at Industrial Logic. And I spent 10 years in healthcare before spending the 10 plus years I have now in technology. And for me, organizational behavior is my jam because I really believe that everything that we do starts with the way that we behave. So that's a little bit about me. Annie, you want to take it?
Yeah. So I'm Annie Dressen, she, her pronouns. And I too have been working in healthcare for many years with a break in between, but working in nonprofits my whole career. And so, like you, Tara, thinking about the way we behave, I think my jam is creating relationships. So I work with volunteers and knowing how to recognize folks who come in without pay and what their motivations are is really something that makes me curious and also provides me a lot of opportunity to create relationships and really understand people's passions and interests and fears at the same time.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank
Wonderful.
you. Dylan.
Hi, I am Dylan Hatch. I am a coach currently with Calabrio, working with several of our product delivery teams. I've been working with teams that are delivering value via software for a little over a decade now. I love the realm. A lot of complex problems with groups of smart people trying to solve them. It's also a realm that can be very high pressure and very unhealthy for people, just depending on how everyone is able to show up the environment that they're doing all this hard work in. So I love the arena, but my jam is how all of the personal relationships are the foundation of everything that a business might want from a team that is, in my experience, delivering value via software. And there is no end of complexity to it. There's no end of need for it. And the ability to see a group of people gel a little closer than they did a week ago and know that I had some part in that is just fantastic. So that's what I like, and it's also what kind of brought me to this experience together.
Awesome. Thank you both for the intros.
Mm-hmm.
So where shall we jump in? I guess I've known both of you for quite some time. We all live in the same Twin Cities area. Can you both share a little bit about why you wanted to take a class like this and just a little background for folks who are watching if you haven't heard of it? The Actionable Psychological Safety Workshop is really meant to bring people together to recognize how our own behavior can be adapted and changed just as much as we would look at any sort of project, and identifying how we can start to change our own ecosystems from the inside out. So what drove both of you to want to take it?
You want to go first, Katie?
No, I would love.
I'm on it.
All right, do it.
Nice.
Do it. Go for it.
It's I think two main themes that brought me to it. So one is that there's so much value in recognizing and engaging with and being purposeful about creating psychological safety. There's so much value there. People are generally knowing on a broader basis that there's value there, but still people are have a hard time engaging with it. Leaders have a hard time engaging with it. So I wanted to find more ways to talk about it, because any given stakeholder or leader or individual person who's having an issue, the right combination of words is going to make this all click for them and they're going to be engaged, while the wrong combination of words, it's just not going to connect. So that was a big one, was more ideas about ways to communicate about this. And then the other thing was just looking for more simple patterns that I could put to work easily and quickly, just anywhere in a given day, that would make a cumulative difference on this. So yeah, those were the initial things that brought me to it.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, I love that, Dylan. I think that like making connections and being able to quickly plug things in that might be an easy solution in a moment where things are intense. I think that was a lot of our intent behind. This shouldn't feel like additional work. I mean, the human behavior stuff is always tough, but it shouldn't be a job on top of a job because we're kind of behaving and working at the same time. So how do we blend those things? So I love that. Annie, what about you?
I'm trying to like pull from the recesses of my brain. I have a pretty strong connection with our safety group here at Children. So we have a whole department of safety, and kind of saw the niche of psychological safety being part of that. And I think the way I came at it was almost more of a recognition of, I think we're missing psychological safety. And so, what tools can I learn that I can try to implement, even on a small scale, what psychological safety means and how to potentially create a team that feels psychologically safe in a larger organization, in hopes that that could cause the ripple effect for other groups or other departments, or even just a whole class of psychological safety for leaders, managers, directors, with their teams. Uh, I work in pediatric healthcare, and it's really hard, and it can really, the stress and the loss and the grief can be a lot. And I think that being in that space really lends itself to having psychological safety, and needing psychological safety for those folks to be able to process their work, process what's happening within this building, and then how to do it safely, um, without retribution, and allowing people to be humans and not robots on taking care of sick kids.
Yeah. I love that. Yes,
Yeah.
that's a super volatile space that you're in. And I can only imagine that, when things get intense and pressure is high, unfortunately, sometimes the worst in us can come out sometimes when we don't intend it to. And
Yep.
yeah, totally get that.
Yeah.
Awesome. So as far as attending the class, so our class is 6 weeks, and we dig into all sorts of stuff, and you both know this, reflection sessions and practices and all that stuff. I'm wondering what was most applicable for you and why, of some of the practices that we dig into. And just to name a few: responsibility process. We dig really deeply into Gottman's Four Horsemen, about how, kind of like what Annie's talking about, when there's these big pressures that are happening somewhere, are we shutting down? How are we showing up? Or things like cycles of mistrust. But I'm curious, and I guess Dylan, I'll start with you. What did you find to be the most impactful and applicable for you in your world? And that could be work and otherwise, because one kind of.
Right. Absolutely. The most broadly applicable piece was, and it's just everywhere throughout, work and the rest of my life. And I've had this affect many interactions with so many people. It's just the being aware of when I am reacting to something, and taking a breath and observing my reaction, and then deciding what I want to do rather than just reacting. That's shown up in a lot of ways, and it's also such a simple thing that I can remember it. And I've talked to a couple other people when they've been struggling with some things. And again, it's that simple thing that you can actually remember. So that's huge. And it's such a small thing and such a simple thing and such a, well, yeah, but it makes a huge difference having thought about that and put that to work. That was really big. And I think that what I'm finding is, and this is what I love about, the course and how we did it and everything, the interactions where we all dug in and really kind of, were able to feel what each one of these tools would do. And now with those mural boards and everything, I have the whole toolkit sitting there. So I go back and check in on it because I can't remember all of it. But I'm finding that eventually there will be the right time for each one of these tools. The cycles of mistrust actually got some action for me over the last couple of months, both with teams and their managers, both from both sides, talking about cycles of mistrust and how they get perpetuated, and having some situations move in a good direction because of it. And it was just a well understood tool that people were able to use for themselves. And then the other one that was really sticking out to me is meant, said, heard, understood. That pattern I got really good use both at work and with myself and my fantastic partner Gretchen. It came in really handy for us as well. So, like you said, it's all one thing, work and life. But those are some of the ones that really stuck out for me.
Awesome. I think that. So when I started doing this work, I think cycles of mistrust for me was kind of, it was like easy to understand for me in concept that we get defensive, we do a thing, the other person gets defensive, they do a thing, and it just goes. But like trying to find a place where you can pump the brakes when it's your turn to react is kind of like, it's such a simple self-awareness thing, but we don't think about it. And we just continue moving through the motions. And it's like, nope, this person's still really tough to work with. They're still tough. Because when it comes back to you, you just volley it without thinking. I was really good at volleyball. Can you say? The worst, by the way. I think it's awesome that you've been able to take those things and apply it in real time, especially when you can observe it happening outside of you and just kind of give an invitation for folks to maybe explore. There are two sides to it, right? And we both play a part. So I love that. Annie, what about you?
Dylan, I'm so glad you reminded me about the take the breath. You're having the feeling, take the breath before you react, because I think to kind of piggyback off of that, I know it's in there somewhere. And that's such a, I need to put that on a board next to my desk, because I always remember that from our cohort. That was brilliant. I think to take it a step further, when I don't take that breath and I do react, I think what I have taken away from this is to model authentic apologies when I do misstep, or when I am out of line, or catching myself in those spaces where I'm like, you know what, that was a reaction and that was not cool, and I'm a human and sometimes that happens. And not to make excuses, and to apologize for it authentically and in space with other people, to show folks that it's okay to make mistakes, and to apologize for them. I also think about Gottman's Four Horsemen, just on a personal level. I have been therapized with a Gottman therapist, and so that showed up before I even came to this cohort, within partner therapy, and I think those Gottman actually helped move the dial for my partner and I. And so then to see it again as applicable in not only life, but also in work, was also like, oh, yeah, I recognize that. I recognize where my coping mechanism, or my coping place within Gottman is this, and how do I kind of break out of that. I think one of the other things that I really enjoyed from the class was radical candor. And, I feel like that sort of ties into, or I link it a little bit to Brene Brown saying clear is kind. And so really trying to give feedback in a way that is helpful, that is kind, but that isn't necessarily muddled with, ruinous empathy and those types of things. And so I know for some people that's difficult, but really trying again that clear is kind, to kind of take radical candor and put it in a more actionable form that I can practice on hopefully a regular basis.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I totally love what you said. I had to write it down, the modeling authentic apologies.
Mm.
I think that we are so, when we feel bad about something, it's almost like just to get it off of our chest, we'll just be like, oh, super sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But if we take a minute to take a breath, and Annie, I'm the same as you. So Annie and I have known each other for, I think I've probably known both of you for almost the same amount of time, but Annie and I used to be neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you and I get very passionate about things. And sometimes I know I can get so passionate that I'm not thinking, I'm just speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So then when I apologize too, I'll apologize right away, but I'm not like, give myself a minute to say like, well, what are you
Mm-hmm.
apologizing for and how can it be more authentic? And I kind of love that,
Mm-hmm.
like tied in with the radical candor piece around like being able to be empathetic and challenge directly. And at the same time, if you screw up, being able to say, I'm super sorry that this happened, because like giving a reason as to why, why
And
that
being,
happened. Yeah.
yeah, I love where you're both going with this, and being there in that uncomfortable moment, and sharing an authentic apology with someone, and not trying to make it better, not trying to explain it, not trying to excuse it, just being in that uncomfortable moment. It is one of these. Again, I think that there's many places where this pattern showed up in all of the stuff we talked about and worked with, but the discomfort leads you in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And we're
Yeah.
not necessarily wired to perceive that if we
Mm-hmm.
haven't been getting some guidance in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I just to cycle back on that too, I sometimes when I think about, so number one, this is what I want my legacy to be at my
Mm.
current job, is I want people to remember me apologizing when I erred. Because I think in the whole world, there's been so much, I don't want to call it entitlement, but like that when you have erred, you just double down and you're like,
Mm,
like,
yeah.
you made this mistake. Well, yeah, you suck. So like, it's okay that you made it. Like, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
Um, and I think a lot of times we want to have those apologies, but also throw in like, this is where I'm coming from, or this is how like s- excuse is kind of a big word, but I think
Mhm.
sometimes I want to focus less about how I feel about it, but more about um, how that wasn't potentially respectful to the person who I engaged in that reactive behavior with. So, you didn't deserve that response. I apologize. You are a person I respect and I want to engage with, and that was, that was uncalled for. And I hope that you'll consider accepting my apology.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
just feel a need to keep riffing off of everything that you say,
Yeah.
which is
Go for
kind of
it.
like what it was when we were together in the class. So
Yeah.
perfect. Just
Yay.
continuing. But that the ability to extend that apology and not engage in any kind of justification whatsoever, that just made me think about how many of the anti-patterns that we talked about in our class are things that can come from a place of a good heart. And that's one of the things that I was remembering from the class and trying to relate to people that I work with when they're striking sparks off of each other. And the for instance is, I'm apologizing to you, but I'm also telling you why I acted like that and where I was coming from,
Mm-hmm.
because I want you to know that I was really caring about you when I did that wrong thing. And so it comes from this good place, but it totally dilutes the apology. And it does,
Mm-hmm.
so good heart doesn't always equal good impact, but negative impact does not mean it came from a negative space. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just one of the patterns that I think came through in a lot of our discussions,
Yeah.
that I liked a lot and I put to use.
Awesome.
Great.
I
Yeah.
love that. I think, and it ties back to that cycle of mistrust, right? Like, how can you stop something? Maybe by giving a genuine apology and saying, hey, you know what? I didn't mean to sound like the world's biggest jerk. However, I recognize I might have. But I think that to Annie's point, like how people double down
Mhm.
when and it becomes this battle. It's like, but what if you just didn't? What if
Yeah.
you just said, we both have a stake in this. We've both made mistakes. I can't speak for you, but that kind of comes back to the responsibility process. Like, nobody can give me responsibility. I can only give it myself. I can't give it to you. So here's my role in this. And, the genuine apology not being living in shame or something, but being able to say, wow, I can see how this wasn't super helpful. And Annie, I like what you said about, here's what I'd like to do better next time. And I hope you can understand that. I love that. I hope you can understand that piece, because you're not going to, beating ourselves up endlessly for behaving badly doesn't solve any problems. In fact, now it's turning into a whole other conversation.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of power there. I love that.
And no one, you're not entitled to someone else's acceptance of the apology. That's out of your hands. That is not within your control. So you can do what you need to do, but now it's in that person's court to make the next step or say the next thing, or decide how they would like to interact with you going forward. And I think that cycle of mistrust also, that's another one I use all the time. But Tara, same as you, I'm like, I see it. It's happening. How do I throw the wrench in the wheel and be like, let's stop this? And the only thing I've come up with is sometimes it might be ruinous empathy. I don't know, where I'm just like, let me just pour honey all over this person and see if it'll change anything. Trying hard.
Right? Sometimes that's like the thing we try. And we're Minnesotans, so let's be kind to ourselves. Empathy can be our unintentional go-to. But I think sometimes it's just throwing more gasoline on the fire. So sometimes I think there has to be that touch of just being gentle for a moment that I look at as definitely directly empathetic. So I think that you're so on the right path there. I love that.
Yeah. Nice.
So y'all took the class probably about a year and a half ago. That's wild.
Yeah.
Because I was living in a totally different place. I had a different hair color, sort of.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm curious, what does this look like for you today? You talked about some examples of kind of, things that you've seen or things that you took away that had a big impact. But what does that look like as you continue on today? What things for you are still a continuous thread in your mind where you think, this is something that I want to keep trying and evolving, and it's already made a really big impact on me. So how do I kind of take it to the next level?
I mean, you want to start, Dylan?
No, you go. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. I think, Tara, you and I have talked about having a charter within my department.
Yes.
And kind of that pulling more of that psychological safety within to that charter. And unfortunately, we haven't gotten to that point yet. We had a new teammate arrive, and that created its own new sets of almost restarting with psychological safety and and how that has sort of changed the dynamic of the team, where I don't feel like I'm ready to potentially, like, we're still unsettled enough to maybe not have a charter, but maybe this is the best time to start a charter. But I think the charter itself within psychological safety kind of brings back to like the values, and if your whole team agrees on something like that, when things err, it's less about the person and more about the policy, the processes, the values, and the whole reason for this department's existence. That it's not personal. It's more about the work that we produce. And so I think that's sort of how I was hoping. I did introduce psychological safety to my team. They'd heard me in the cohort and talking about it and trying to sprinkle some things in here and there. And so, asking people what they thought of psychological safety, and brought it to a staff meeting. And it was really remarkable to hear folks talk about what they thought about it, what it meant to them. And I was so excited to to take that next step to a charter, and then job got in the way, new teammate got in the way, but it's still something I really try to think about as I'm within this organization as a whole. And I was reading over some of the like cheat sheets because I was just like, oh my God, what do I remember about psychological safety? And I'm like, oh, this is sort
You
of
remember
ingrained.
more than you think you do.
I do. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm doing all of these things. I'm practicing these things. But
Right. Because, well, I think that
yeah.
you hit the nail on the head, Annie, with the practicing thing. And I love what you said about, you know, when we recognize where we are, when we build self-awareness, we can actually focus on making amazing experiences for people as opposed to bumping into each other and exhausting ourselves because we're frustrated or we're feeling shut down or someone's shutting down on us. Like, we can focus on the real problems and actually helping people instead of tripping over each other. And I think for me, like, that's pertinent in any industry. So I love that you're not coming from the tech side, you're coming from the medical side. And that's it's so funny because that's where I started my journey with this whole thing, was working in healthcare and working in an inbound call center, and then a mental health clinic that was outpatient. And so I think that recognizing that this does impact all of us as humans, no matter where we are. If we could just recognize it's not just a soft skill and it's something that's really crucial, we'd all be better for it, I think. But Dylan,
I love what you were saying, Annie, because it is just lighten me up, because I've been thinking exactly the same thing. That, okay, so I have been primarily using this so far for in little incremental ways for myself and individuals that I'm interacting with, which is perfect. It's, you know, using the patterns, seeing what they're like, building a couple of stories about seeing how they work, what kind of difference they can make. Great. So then kind of next, and this is like you talked about, the work can get in the way. So it's, where can we fit in an expansion of this?
Yes.
And my thought for the next expansion is for a couple of my teams to go through a rechartering, which I think will be way richer than the last time we chartered. And then I would do, before we do our charter, I'd do an hour or two where we're talking about psychological safety, and again, sharing some of the patterns and thoughts that are, you know, simple and easy to grasp, but most importantly, leading it to a place where everyone's sharing what makes them feel psychologically safe and what takes away from psychological safety, and have that conversation, and then go into chartering. Maybe it's later that day, maybe it's the next day, so that as we're talking about the patterns of how we want to work together, we've just got that shared foundation of what psychological safety means to us. Because then you get it built into those working agreements in the charter, those patterns are going, and that lets the team claim their own psychological safety, much like I, at a personal level, have been working to claim my own psychological safety. I want to change the whole org, but if I can change it for me and then the team can change it for themselves, then it's exciting. We're going in the right direction.
Absolutely. Well, Dylan, I love that. And I think that so hits on, like, I've had people come to me who are interested in taking the class, and they say, well, but my leader won't listen, or, you know, how do I get my CEO to take it? And I think it's exactly what you're talking about. That change comes from within. Change comes from a place. It doesn't matter where you are in the organization. It really doesn't, because once people start noticing a difference, they say, wow, what's that person doing differently? How can I get some of that? And then that becomes a bigger conversation.
It does. And one thing that this whole experience right now is making me think about is the value of getting together with people and just telling stories about how this is manifesting for us and in our organization, and things that we're trying and the effects that we see. Because this is like a practice ground where I'm realizing, oh yeah, putting it just that way, that sounded really good. Okay, I'm going to talk to this one manager that we haven't quite connected on this, and I'm going to talk about it that way, because I think that they might just, they might grasp the story then. So there's this whole, how do we all get together and help each other get good at telling the story of what our journey and what our team's journey with psychological safety is. Tell the story, get everyone's imagination engaged, and then it just, again, has that capability to just accelerate and spread.
I love it.
This is fun.
Yeah.
This
I'm
is
glad you invited me.
well, I'm so glad that you both could come and that you both also took the class and have gotten, amazing stuff out of it. That's really all I want for people. And I want to keep growing and iterating and evolving the material. That being said, any final thoughts on things that kind of are top of mind, or that you walked away from the class thinking that's a thing that I'm going to remember for a while?
There's a lot there, right?
Yeah, I was like, many things.
Yeah. I think the thing that is emerging as the biggest powerhouse of the whole experience for me, that it didn't show up that way for me initially, but the thing which is emerging is the power that I have to establish psychological safety. The versus I have felt for much of my career that if I could only get this business to engage and care about this and reinforce it, what we could do would be amazing. And that is still true, but I'm not helpless before that. I
Right.
am able to establish a beachhead and build outward from there. And I can feel the difference that I can make. And that is a huge difference from me coming out of this experience versus going into that class. And that's a huge value.
I love that. I think that a big reason that I was so drawn to this work in the first place is because I don't want anyone to ever feel powerless. But there are still days where we all feel powerless.
Mm.
So I think that's super powerful as a way to kind of come back to center and say, I can also have a thing here where it's not even about controlling it. It's just like being aware of it. But I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Annie,
Oh,
anything?
that boost was great. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not. Sometimes when you live in the basement and are just yelling like, we're the Kevin McAllister of this organization, don't forget about us. Like, wait,
Yeah.
no, I have more power than I have remembered in a long time.
Mhm.
So it's always good to come back to this and really re-engage with it. I think something that I've really taken away, and it might be small, but I really am trying to live with this, and then also what it produces outside of that, and in ways that it might tie into. I always call them the pillars of white supremacy, but there's
Oh, yeah.
it's called something else. But um, sometimes, and the way, and I'm getting there. So uh, I have realized that discord within an organization is okay and is actually good. And
Mm.
one of the again, because I forget what it's called, but I call it the pillars of white supremacy. One of those is just like there's something about like open um like disagreement, or again like open discord, and that it's okay to sit with that. Not everyone is going to have come to the same conclusion, have the same reality, any of that stuff, and that having that uncomfort is okay. It has to be okay in order um to dismantle some of that white supremacist delusion and behaviors. So
Right.
I am really big about raising problems, and then again really like allowing for that discord. It's not bad. It's not insubordinate. It's other ideas. It's curiosity. It's different ways to come at the same issue or problem, and then for me kind of just like, but where does it go from there? And I think that's always the big question mark box of like, maybe it never comes together, but people feel safe that they have said what they needed to say, and that they feel heard, and that it's not some lip service,
Mm.
and um and that disagreement is part of it, and it's okay.
I love that. A way that I've been thinking about that whole try to get a better relationship going with discomfort is thinking of it along the lines of the discomfort of sore muscles after you've been working them hard. And that is what this discomfort is. It's venturing into areas together that we haven't done before and strengthening these muscles of honesty and bravery and vulnerability. And
Yes.
those are hard muscles to work, and the discomfort is just those sore muscles, and take the same pleasure in it that you would if you just had a great week of workouts at the gym and just felt like you were on a real good path because you've been working those muscles so hard. So that's a whole story that I'm trying to learn how to tell in a way that's going to engage, but it's already working for me, so that's a good
I
story.
love it. Yeah, I love that.
That's so pertinent. I did some indoor bouldering yesterday and I'm super sore. And
nice. And that's a good sore.
It's a good sore. It is. And it's like, well, these, Rome wasn't built in a day. These things don't happen overnight. But it's exactly what you're both talking about. It's being okay with discord, and at the same time, that's strengthening our muscles to get more used to talking about these things and not have it be this unspoken thing, and we can't show how we really feel. And it's just, we're going to accept that, work just sucks. And that's just a thing. There's so much work we can do in that space. So
yeah,
I love that so much.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much for joining us for this talk.
So good to talk with both of you.
Same.
Okay. Thank you both so much for your time.
Yeah. Well, hopefully talk to you soon.
Yes.
I hope we do. We must.
And for folks who are interested, feel free to reach out to us at Industrial Logic if you are interested in taking our public psychological safety workshop, or if you are interested in a private class, which we do as well. So we will work directly with just your team and your ecosystem. And it's a great time. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Be well.